And the second group of rodenticides are the organic rodenticides. See, under organic rodenticide, the very important group of rodenticides are the anticoagulants. See, the anticoagulants, they are the most commonly used organic rodenticides. And coming to the discovery of anticoagulants, see, anticoagulants we have already studied under drugs acting on the vascular system. Also, we have studied about anticoagulants. So, you know about the discovery of anticoagulant. So, to repeat it, so the discovery of anticoagulant itself is a serendipity. So, it is an accidental discovery. So, what the mode of discovery of this anticoagulant is, see, the animal, so during the early 19th century, 20th century, so in United States of America, several cattle, so they used to show the oozing of blood from all the natural orifices once they consume this sweet clover plant. So when they examine which is the reason behind this sweet clover poisoning, say they found out dicumarol being the culprit. And when they started examining the structure of this dicumarol, so they examined that, they discovered that dicumarol belonged to this hydroxycoumarin group. And when they found out this hydroxycoumarin structure, so the scientists started thinking, see, why this hydroxycoumarin is causing toxicity? Why can't we use this hydroxycoumarin for some other purpose? Then they started using this hydroxycoumarin compound as anticoagulant rodenticide, and also they use some compounds of hydroxycoumarin for therapeutic purpose to treat the thromboembolic disorder. So that's how this anticoagulant rodenticide discovery was made. So it was in serendipity. It was not an intentional discovery like I have to find out an anticoagulant rodenticide. So it has not occurred like that. So it is an accidental discovery. And the chemistry of anticoagulant. See, the chemistry of anticoagulant structure wise, it belonging to two group of the anticoagulant. One is they are either derivative of the 4-hydroxycoumarin or they will be derivative of indane So which are the group of drug which are derivatives of 4-hydroxycoumarins? The examples are the warfarin, bromodiolone, comafuril, comachlor, brodifacoum, bromodiolone. So here the comb will be there. So as a suffix or prefix, the comb will be there. So any compound that will contain this comb belongs to 4-hydroxycoumarin derivatives. So apart from you get this bromodiolone and the warfarin. So it has been repeated. Then brodifacoum. Brodifacoum is also an important constituent of many rodenticide. Many rodenticide what we commonly use to kill cockroaches also what we use. So it contains this brodifacoum and bromodiolone also. And the derivatives of indendione, the examples are pindone, chlorofascinone, difascinone. So fascinone, it include the derivatives of indendiones. Okay, so the examples are important. So which are the examples which come under the derivative of 4-hydroxycoumarin? So these are the examples. What are the examples which are the derivatives of indendione? So these are the examples. And the classical classification of anticoagulant rodenticide, so it is not the above classification. So the classification of anticoagulant rodenticide, it is mainly based on its time of origin. So when it was developed, the anticoagulant rodenticide, based on the time of development, and also its ability to kill the warfarin resistant rat. So based on that, the anticoagulant rodenticide classified into first generation anticoagulant and second generation anticoagulants. So we shall see what is the difference between first generation and second generation anticoagulants. So first generation and second generation anticoagulant, so I told you it is mainly classified based on the time of development. So first generation, they have developed before 1970s. Second generation was developed after 1970s. So as the time progresses, the usage of first generation anticoagulant, these rodents, they become resistant to the first generation anticoagulant. And the classical example being the warfarin. So warfarin was the first anticoagulant which has been discovered. So rats showing resistant to the usage of warfarin. Whereas the second generation, so it is having capability to kill even the warfarin resistant rats. So those rats which were not killed after usage of warfarin also, those rats will be killed by this second generation anticoagulant. And potency wise, first generation is having low potency. That's the reason why it requires multiple dosage. So you should use 1 or 2 baits, 2 to 3 baits to kill a rat. Whereas here the potency is high, a single dosage is enough to kill a rat. And first generation, the half-life is short, so there will be faster elimination. So whereas second generation, it will be having longer half-life, and this longer half-life, it is owing to its retention in the tissues, and that's the reason why second generation is also called as long-acting anticoagulant. So each group of anticoagulants are long-acting anticoagulants, second generation group. And first generation, they are also used as therapeutic agent to treat thromboembolic disorders. Whereas second generation, since it is having narrow margin of safety, it is not used in therapeutics. It is used only as a rodenticide. So the examples of first generation, so which belongs to the coumarin derivative are warfarin and dicumarol. And those compounds belong to the indene derivative, but a first generation is pindone. So similarly, the coumarin derivative which belongs to second generation are bromodiolone and brodifacoum. And the indene derivatives are chlorofazanone and difazanone. So this is the difference between the first generation anticoagulant and the second generation anticoagulants. Then there are some properties of this anticoagulant, whether it is first generation or second generation. So general properties of the anticoagulants, see, they are odorless and they are tasteless. See, why they are made odorless and tasteless? It is to create a no bait shyness property. So what do you mean by no bait shyness? See, if suppose the rat bait, if you use a rat bait which is having a strong odor and a disagreeable taste, what rat will do? Say they won't eat that rat bait, and they won't carry that bait to its family also. They will not give it to its brother or sister. So it will not give. So it will be made odorless and tasteless. So at that time what will happen? The rat thinks, so this is not objectable, so it will not produce any danger to us. So it will take that bait and it will eat the bait and it will give it to his family and friends also, right? So no fingerprint will be there. So rat will be having no clue how they died. So if they get any clue that by eating this bait they are getting killed, say they don't touch this bait. So that's the reason majority of the rat baits are odorless, tasteless, so that there will be no bait shyness. And dogs and cat, they are more sensitive when you compare it with the ruminants. So drugs which decrease the GIT microflora. For example, if the animal is taking the antibiotics like sulfonamide or any bacteriostatic antibiotics, if a dog is taking sulfa or any bacteriostatic antibiotic, so for such a pet, if they consume this anticoagulant rodenticide, so the toxicity potential will be high in such pets. So why? So that will be the assignment question number 1. So it will be dealt later in the mechanism of action. You will be knowing why it will increase the anticoagulant toxicity. Then also drug which displace the anticoagulants from the plasma protein, it will increase the anticoagulant potential, toxicity potential will be increased. See, for example, warfarin. See, I always used to tell warfarin, it is 99% plasma protein bound and only 1% is free, and that is causing the toxicity. See, if you use warfarin, if the animal is consuming warfarin and that pet is under the treatment of phenylbutazone or aspirin, you are giving a dog a phenylbutazone injection and accidentally it has consumed warfarin, what this phenylbutazone will do? So phenylbutazone is also 70 to 80% plasma protein bound. So it will compete for the plasma protein to bind. So in that case, it will displace some amount of warfarin. So when it displaces some amount of warfarin, it will lead to increased anticoagulant toxicity. So that's the reason any drug which displaces the anticoagulant from the plasma protein, it is going to increase the anticoagulant toxicity. Or whenever there is anticoagulant toxicity, if you use an NSAID like phenylbutazone or aspirin, it is going to aggravate the condition. It is not going to reduce the condition. So you should be careful while using an drug which displaces the plasma protein binding. Then toxicokinetics, so the route of entry through oral route or through dermal route, so gets into the circulation. So in the circulation, increased plasma protein binding, then increased accumulation in the liver, spleen, kidney, and then it will be excreted out. Now the mechanism of action. What is the mechanism of action of anticoagulant rodenticide? So it's been dealt under drugs acting on vascular system also. So again repeating. So it acts mainly by inhibiting the enzyme vitamin K epoxide reductase. See, by inhibiting this enzyme, this rodenticide, it affects the clotting mechanism. How it will affect? It delays the clotting and it will lead to bleeding from the natural orifices or bleeding from the internal organ. So that is a major mechanism of action of anticoagulant rodenticide. Now we shall see, so what is this enzyme, how it is going to inhibit this enzyme, and how it is going to cause delayed clotting. See, in liver, you know the clotting factors are there, and some clotting factors, they are inactive in nature, like 2, 7, 9, 10. Factor 2, factor 7, factor 9 and 10, they are inactive in nature. So they have to be activated by a process of carboxylation into active clotting factor. Then only they will get involved in the clotting mechanism, right? So for that activation, so they need a cofactor. So which will be the cofactor here for their activation? The vitamin K will be the cofactor. So vitamin K, so while activating this factor, it itself get converted into vitamin K epoxide, right? So inactive clotting factor gets converted into active clotting factor, coupled with vitamin K getting converted into vitamin K epoxide. Then this vitamin K epoxide, it will be reconverted back into the vitamin K, so that the vitamin K will be readily available for activation of further inactive clotting factor. So that is a normal mechanism that will be happening in the body. So when there is anticoagulant rodenticide toxicity, the enzyme that is involved in the reconversion of vitamin K epoxide back into the vitamin K, which is vitamin K epoxide reductase, so this enzyme will be inhibited by the anticoagulant rodenticide. So when it inhibits the enzyme, there will be no reconversion back and no vitamin K available for the activation of the remaining inactive clotting factor. So that is the whole mechanism of action of anticoagulant rodenticides. So that's been explained here also. So your clotting factor 2, 7, 9, 10 are synthesized in inactive form in the liver. It needs to be activated, that means carboxylated by the help of vitamin K. And vitamin K, while doing it, it itself get converted into vitamin K epoxide. Now this vitamin K epoxide, it has to be reconverted back into the vitamin K for further activation of remaining inactive to active clotting factors. So while doing this mechanism, whenever there is anticoagulant toxicity, what these anticoagulants will do, it mainly inhibit the vitamin K epoxide reductase enzyme. So there will be no conversion of vitamin K epoxide back to the vitamin K, and fresh vitamin K is unavailable for further activation of the clotting factor. So that is the whole mechanism of action. Now the question is whether the anticoagulant action, it is acute in nature. So a dog has consumed an anticoagulant rodenticide, so immediately whether it is going to show clinical sign. So the answer is no. So why it is not showing the immediate clinical sign, or why it is not getting affected immediately? See here, to take for an example, there are 1000 inactive clotting factors in the body, right? So there are 1000 inactive clotting factors in the body. So in one cycle, 100 inactive clotting factors are getting activated. So here 100 inactive clotting factor is getting activated into 100 active clotting factor. So meanwhile, vitamin K is getting converted into vitamin K epoxide, and then vitamin K epoxide reconverted back into vitamin K. So when we use when there is anticoagulant rodenticide toxicity, it inhibits this enzyme, no conversion back of vitamin K epoxide into vitamin K. So when there is no vitamin K here, so you cannot activate the remaining 900 inactive clotting factors, right? Remaining 900 inactive clotting factor, it will remain inactive only. So whether in this situation there will be delayed clotting, so whether it will cause delayed clotting? No, it will not affect the clotting mechanism at this situation. Why? So it has already activated 100 clotting factors, and this 100 clotting factor, it is involved in the clotting mechanism, and only after the utilization of the duty of this 100 clotting factor, then this clotting mechanism will be affected, right? So for that it will take time. See, 100 clotting factors are already being activated. They will get involved in the clotting mechanism. They will start doing its duty. Only after full utilization of this 100 active clotting factor, they need the fresh active clotting factor. But there is no fresh active clotting factor because the 900 inactive is, it will be like that. So there is no vitamin K to activate this 900 inactive clotting factor. So that's the reason why the onset of action in anticoagulant rodenticide, it will be delayed. So there will be no acute toxicity of the anticoagulant rodenticide. So that's the answer for this question. So whether anticoagulant action is acute in nature? No. Why? The same thing, because forward conversion of vitamin K to vitamin K epoxide already activated some amount of clotting factor, and that activated clotting factors will be doing its duty until anticoagulant action seen, right? So onset of action, anticoagulant action will take time. So what will be the net effect of anticoagulant rodenticide? Blood will fail to clot and there will be bleeding. And what are the clinical signs in anticoagulant toxicity? The clinical sign, so generally there will be late onset of action, starts only after complete utilization of the preformed active clotting factor. That 100, the example, that 100 active clotting factors duty should be finished, then only the delayed clotting mechanism comes into picture. So after that, the blood discharge from the natural orifices, from all the natural orifices, the blood will start oozing out, and there will be visible hematomas under the skin and hematoma in the joints. So generalized purpurea, pale mucous membrane, dyspnea will be there, hypoxia, shock, and death of the animal if it is untreated. And depending upon the site of the hemorrhage, clinical signs also varies. If suppose hemorrhage is in any internal organ, if there is sudden internal hemorrhage, there will be acute anemia, animal will go to shock and there will be death. Or the bleeding in the brain or spinal cord, there will be ataxia, there will be staggering, there will be convulsion. Or the bleeding in the joint, there will be lameness, joint swelling, pain in the joints. In the lungs, there will be coughing, epistaxis, dyspnea. Similarly, if there is bleeding in the urinary tract, you will find hematuria. If there is bleeding in the GIT, there will be melena, so blood in the feces. So what are the post-mortem findings? You will see in the anticoagulant rodenticide toxicity. There will be hemorrhage in the mucous membrane, pale mucous membrane will be there, subcutaneous bleeding will be there, and the blood will be collected in the internal organs. In the cavities, blood will be there, internal hemorrhage in the blood cavities. Blood does not clot. Blood usually don't clot in the post-mortem examination also. Then the diagnosis, history. See, history of eating such baits, or history of the left out food materials which are mixed with the bait. So that is the primary diagnostic thing. So if owner tells this history, so very easy to diagnose, very easy to treat. If you don't tell this history, so if there is any missing factor in the history, very difficult to diagnose. Only based on the clinical signs we need to diagnose here. So there will be large hematomas, bleeding. So when you puncture, so if you want to put any drug through the veins, so when you puncture the vein, there will be large hematoma formation or frequent bleeding from the veins will be there. So laboratory findings, what are the laboratory findings? There will be increased coagulation time. The activated coagulation time will be increased. Prothrombin time will be increased. So because delayed clotting mechanism is there, obviously the prothrombin time will be increased. And any traces of anticoagulant, if you find any traces of anticoagulant in the blood, so that will be a possible diagnostic feature for anticoagulant toxicity. And the differential diagnosis for anticoagulant toxicity, so that will be assignment question 2 for you. Okay, so what are the differential diagnosis for anticoagulant rodenticide toxicity? Then whether specific antidote is available for anticoagulant rodenticide toxicity? Yes, it's available, specific antidote. So what will be the rationale here? So you have to regenerate the vitamin K amount. So the rationale behind using here is you have to regenerate the vitamin K amount. If you regenerate the vitamin K, it will be available for activation of the inactive clotting factors, right? That is the rationale here. So what is the specific antidote? And very commonly used antidote is phytomenadione, vitamin K1, vitamin K type 1. It is also called as phylloquinone. Why phylloquinone? It is obtained from the chloroplasts of the plant. It is present in the plant, so obtained from the chloroplasts of the plant. So it is called as phylloquinone or phytomenadione. So it is a specific antidote. So very commonly used form of vitamin K rather than the vitamin K type 2 or K3. So this vitamin K1 is very commonly used, and commonly used in animals and human beings as well. So generally this phytomenadione, it will be supplied for 1 week. So if you suspect, or if you see, or if you see the culprit, if it belongs to first generation anticoagulant, 1 week therapy has to be continued. Or if it is second generation anticoagulant, a 4-week therapy has to be continued. Only if you know what generation of anticoagulant. If you don't know any anticoagulant, you are arbitrarily, if you are going, minimum 2-week therapy should be undergone. The patient should undergo 2 weeks therapy of vitamin K. So what will be the treatment regimen, the dosage regimen? See, for dogs and cat, which are very commonly susceptible, 2.5 to 5 milligram per kg body weight, slow IV initially you have to give. So initially for for a day, for single day you go for slow IV, then from second day for 3 to 4 days you can go for IM or subcutaneous route. In divided dose you can go, right? Then after 4 days you can follow this schedule, 0.25 to 2.5 milligram per kg body weight per day through oral route in 2 to 3 divided doses for 1 week in first generation, up to 4 weeks in case of second generation. If you don't know, minimum 2 weeks you have to give this vitamin K treatment. Then supportive treatment, what will be the supportive treatment? Blood transfusion, you can use emetics, activated charcoal, and then oxygen therapy. And there are some contraindications for this organic rodenticide toxicity. So contraindication, you cannot use corticosteroid, you cannot use sulfonamide, you cannot use antihistaminics, adrenaline, aspirin should not be used to treat the organic rodenticide, anticoagulant rodenticide toxicity. Why we should not use this drug will become your assignment question 3. So what are the assignment questions? So the first one is, drug which decreases the GAT microflora, it will increase the anticoagulant action. Why? Then write differential diagnosis for anticoagulant toxicity. At least 4 you have to write the differential diagnosis. Then why this contraindication, why these drugs are not used in anticoagulant toxicity, the reason. So that is the third question. The fourth one, DASH is an example of second generation anticoagulant toxicity, anticoagulants which belong to the hydroxycoumarin group. So this group, which is a second generation anticoagulant, you have to write. Then name some brand names of Brodifacoum and Bromodiolone. I told very commonly used to kill cockroaches also. So very commonly you see the important brand names that we use in our household also. So DASH enzyme is inhibited by anticoagulant, and DASH is the antidote for anticoagulant toxicity. And why onset of action is delayed in case of anticoagulant toxicity. Okay, so it's an important topic, so read well. So in the next class I am going to cover the fluoroacetate compound and vitamin D compound. So after that there are few chapters, so that will close the rodenticide also. So thank you.